The appetizer today is a lusty mushroom stew from Jamie Shannon at Commander's Palace. Note his use of field peas cooked in chicken stock and combined with a variety of mushrooms. For the entree, we go to Atlanta. Paul Albrecht of Panos and Paul's presents Chilean Seabass cooked with a parchment cover and served with saffron-infused grits. Dessert is prepared by Patrick Chabert at the legendary Le Francais outside of Chicago. It is the classic floating island featuring a mint-flavored creme anglaise. Jamie Shannon is executive chef at Commander's Palace, one of the grand dining destinations in New Orleans. It has been a career launcher for innumerable chefs across the country and continues to trailblaze with upscale fare that defines New Orleans food. Here is Chef Shannon's mushroom stew.
I have my my smoked chicken stock, which has been smoked to bones for a little while in a smoker. You smoke them on a grill or in a smoker if you're lucky to have one. I just have a little mirepoix, and I want the stock to be nice and clear, so I've simmered it without letting it boil for about 4 hours. And I want to take the fat off as much as possible and skim all this impurities off. I want to strain the stock very carefully. Okay, I have my stock strained, and I'm going to put some field peas in, some fresh field peas with my wild mushroom stew and summer truffles. It's going to give it a good earthy flavor. The field peas have been hauled, and they need to be washed a little bit. They don't take a long time to cook because they're fresh. You can use dried, but I prefer to use the fresh. They're in season right now. I'm just going to blanch them with a little bit of the stock that we have from the smoked chicken carcasses. It's going to cook a little bit. A little bit of stock, a little bit of salt and pepper. The reason I'm blanching these separately is because I want my final product to be nice and clear. The peas have a little starch on them. They will cloud up my stock, so I'm just going to cook these separately, let them cook down a little bit. I have my stock that we have strained. I'm going to season it with a little bit of salt and pepper. Put a little bit of fresh thyme in there and just let it steep. In a separate pan with just a little bit of stock, with no butter because or fat, because you'll have a cloudy pan. I'm going to put a little bit of stock in here, and I'm going to sweat my mushrooms and shallots. First, I'm going to put my shallots in. This is a summer stew, so you want it to be very light. I'm going to put my mushrooms. I have some morels, some shiitakes, oyster mushrooms, some portobellas. It's a good combination. I like to use 4 or 5 different mushrooms if possible, whatever's available. We don't want to cook the mushrooms too much because we want the flavor of each individual mushroom to be distinctive. A little bit more stock. I have a garnish for this. It's going to be sweet potato hay. I have a peeled sweet potato and a mandolin, and I'm going to get the hay together.
The sweet potatoes will be deep fried. Also, garlic chives.
These are our garlic chives. They're a flat chive. We get them in the summertime around here. They're real nice. to have a little distinctive garlic flavor. Okay, looks like our field peas are cooked. We have our mushrooms, which we only want to simmer, sweat down a little bit. We want to keep the elegant, earthy flavors of the mushrooms.
A summer truffle is sliced.
Not a white truffle. It's a little bit less expensive. It's a lot less expensive than the white truffles, and it's a little bit more abundant. It's not as pungent, but it's a good truffle. It's easy to get a hold of. I have some truffle oil. I'm going to put it in the bottom of the hot warm bowl. Is going to make it very aromatic. Place some of my truffles in the bowl. You can use any type of, fresh bean, but these are nice. They're when they're fresh, they have a little bit more of an earthy flavor, which you want for this stew. Chives. I'm going to put a little bit more truffles. Then I have my stock, which has been seasoned. Still nice and clear. Gently. In there. Finish it off with a little truffle oil. There we go, we have our truffle stew.
Albrecht is co-owner and executive chef at Pano's and Paul's, the flagship of a slew of Atlanta restaurants owned by the Buckhead Life Restaurant Group. It placed second overall in the Gourmet Top Tables poll and tops in service and wine lists. The entree is sea bass with grits and oysters.
To start off, I'm using stone count grits. Add a little saffron to my water. Just a pinch. And let it boil very slowly, 6 to 8 minutes. To finish, we're using fresh butter, a little salt, pepper, and it gives a nice starch with the Chilean Seabass.
The fish will be cooked with chopped shallots sweated in butter.
With salt and pepper. Place in the bass and top the shallots. Adding a bay leaf some fish stock, little dry cooking white wine, placing on top the stove. Cover with parchment paper. Butter the paper lightly. Okay. Bring the stock to a boil and finish baking in the oven for 4 to 6 minutes.
At 350 degrees.
You want to make sure the fish is not overcooked. Especially the Chilean sea bass needs to be more medium rare, and you can do it a little bit ahead of time and keep it warm. So you want to make sure it's always undercooked before you serve it. Great. The fish is cooked. Make sure the fish is just medium to medium rare. You want to keep it warm until we finish the sauce. Especially the Chilean sea bass cooks very quickly. It's not like a real fatty fish, like a salmon. It's more like a grouper, snapper, and tuna. So it needs to be just the medium side.
Olympia oysters are shucked.
The oysters, the same way, you just make sure they get lightly firm. You don't want to overcook the oysters either. It's fine. You place the oysters on top of the fish. To that one. Now very quickly we're reducing our fish stock. I strain the shallots out. Adding heavy cream. Reducing it to 1/3. We don't use any flour. It does not need any flour. By reducing the cream to 1/3 and adding a little fresh butter, it gives a nice thickness and shine to the sauce. In order to cut the fat, the richness, we add a pinch of cayenne, a few drops of lemon juice, check for the taste. On very low heat, we adding some unsalted butter. Replacing the saffron grits in the middle of the serving plate. Placing Chilean Seabass on top. At this time, we're adding our dry champagne. Place the fish. Caviar, yeah, caviar. Place in the fish with the champagne sauce and garnish with beluga caviar.
French chef Patrick Chabert's culinary career was almost obligatory. First, he was born in the same town as the Epicurean Bria Saffron. Also, his family was in the restaurant business, and finally, in the U.S., he works at the peerless Le Francais. He offers his version of floating island.
All right, so I'm going to make a floating island. So the first thing I'm going to do is butter my mold, okay? So you make sure that the mold are buttered all over, okay? You don't forget any spot because later you could have problem when you unmold your floating island, all right? So the butter has to be soft, not melted, but soft. Okay, so it's a way to do it. You put granny sugar in the first mold. You go around. And there's another way to go faster actually, which is to do this one. You go from a mold. And the last one. All right. Now very quickly, I'm going to sprinkle my raspberry with some granulated sugar and marinate those raspberry with a little bit of raspberry liquor, okay? And now I'm going to start the meringue, okay?
Egg whites at room temperature are beaten to the soft peak stage. Sugar is added, and they are beaten finely to the stiff peak stage.
I'm going to add my raspberries, fold it quickly. Fill up my foam mold, making sure that the meringue cover up the bottom, because when you flip over after, it has to be very smooth and straight in order to put your garnish, your raspberry. My water bath on the stove, the water has to be hot, it doesn't have to boil. The oven being at 200 degrees, if the water is cold, the water won't have time to warm up, right? And make sure the oven is no more than 200 degrees because the meringue would cook too fast. Takes about 15 minutes, okay? So I would say every so often, rotate the water bath in the oven to make sure that the meringue cook evenly. Okay, now I'm going to work on the creme anglaise, okay?
As with any anglaise, hot milk with the seeds of a vanilla bean is used, but in this case, it's infused with mint. Also, egg yolks whisked with sugar.
Okay, when the milk is hot, put a small amount and very quickly you mix. And now you put back the cream inside of the milk and you cook slowly. If you major meat, it's fine. If you cook too fast, you could ending up by having, I told you, scrambled eggs.
After cooking, the mixture is strained into an ice bath.
Before it's cold, I'm going to add a little bit more of mint. Okay? If it's cold, the mint is not going to infuse. If I do that, it's because when you add egg yolk, you lose a little bit of the taste. And now, you mix. Just to bring the temperature down, you put your milk in contact and flip it over, all right? And as you can see the syrups coming out on the side. You unmold very carefully. And here you have your floating island.
Fresh raspberries are placed on top.
It's a floating island, right? So you need to put something around. Okay? Going to make some that here. Drizzle some top. Just use nice mint leaves and stick it right in the middle. And here you have a floating island.